qualification, and we're going to discuss how students can use this essential assessment model to be able to progress to the university of their aspiration. As Felicity has said, it'd be great if you could mute your microphones if you haven't already, and this webinar will be recorded, so if there is anything you would like to go back to later on, we will be able to share this link with you. As Felicity said, my name is Martin and I am the Director of Teaching and Learning at MPW Birmingham. I'm responsible for the extended project across the 3 centres, but also I have a significant role in Birmingham of developing the curriculum, and I also teach economics. Although I expect most of the questions at the end of this session to be about the extended project qualification, I'll be happy to take any questions about MPW, and my colleagues Felicity, Shahina and Betty will also be able to assist. So I'm going to present you right now with a picture of some zebras, and this probably is the last picture which you're expecting to see when you joined an EPQ webinar this morning. So I want you to imagine that you're stood in front of all of these zebras, and I want you to think about which one is the fastest, which one of these zebras is the strongest, which one is the heaviest, and which one is the smallest. It's virtually impossible, in fact it is impossible, for you to answer any of those questions because all of these zebras look exactly the same. They're all very similarly patterned, very similar manes, facial expressions. It's almost impossible to tell them apart. Now what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you are a university admissions tutor, and I want you to imagine that you have received hundreds and thousands of applications for the limited number of places on your course. When you're looking at all of these applicants, every single student will have very similar predicted grades. You know, in reality, colleges will support their students and want to give them the best chance of making their academic aspirations a reality by predicting them the grades they need to get into their course of choice. These students would also have very similar personal statements. They'd also be boasting about very similar work experience portfolios that they've built up over time. They're also likely to have a similar GCSE profile. And as an admissions tutor, you've potentially got 200 places for your course, whether it be history or dentistry, whether it be medicine or
Martin,
law. Yes?
I'm really sorry, we can't actually see your slides. So all we can see is the first page, which they're standing out from the crowd.
Okay, let's try again. Can you see them now? Betty, can you see them now?
No, so we can just only still see that slide.
Okay. What about now, Betty?
Yes, now we can.
You can see it now. Brilliant, fantastic.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry,
No
sorry
problem.
for.
That's okay.
Thank you.
So as I was saying, you know, now we can see the zebras. If you were asked to determine which one of these zebras was the fastest or the strongest or which was the heaviest, it'd be impossible to tell. And those universities which have all of those admissions portfolios which they've received, all of those UCAS applications, they're going to find it very, very difficult to tell which student is the most suited for the course which they are offering, because each student will have very similar GCSE profiles, very similar work experience, they'll have similar predicted grades, they will have a really high quality reference and personal statement. And therefore, what students need in the modern world when it comes to applying for university places in the United Kingdom is they need something different. They need something that's going to help them to stand out from the crowd. And when the A-levels were reformed in the UK in 2015, it was also an ideal opportunity and time for the exam boards alongside the universities in the UK to reform the extended project qualification. And what I genuinely believe that the EPQ does for all of our students is it allows them to stand out from the crowd. And as we can see here, we have this zebra, which is multicolored, and immediately we can tell that is the most attractive zebra. It really does stand out from the other zebras on the page, just like a student would stand out from the other students applying for a university place if they had an extended project qualification amongst their application. Now, over the next sort of 40 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you about the EPQ, its assessment framework, and all of the required components, and also going to give you some fantastic tips to ensure that your students who are potentially coming to MPW Birmingham, or students who may do so in future, will be able to get a step ahead and ensure they have the best possible extended project to help them in their quest to get to university. So, one of the reasons why the EPQ is so popular for universities in the UK when making admissions decisions now is that it enables students to develop a skill set which maybe some of the traditional A-level qualifications don't develop sufficiently amongst their students. So with the extended project, as some of you may know already, you basically have to create an essay, a diary, and a presentation for your project. And it's very much an independent piece of work. In A-levels, you might be spoon-fed content and spoon-fed information. You get weekly tests at MPW to help you develop. Whereas with the extended project, although you get assigned a supervisor, it's very much up to the students to take responsibility and develop new skills to help them solve the problems they encounter. So students will be creating this essay. They may come into a problem, like, for example, with the coronavirus outbreak, they're having to, find new innovative ways to complete their presentations remotely. Rather than me telling the students what to do, it's up to the students to go and find the solution. And therefore, it allows these students to develop critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, which immediately makes them more attractive to that admissions tutor at university. And also, it gives them some skills to add to their personal statement when they write that in September and October time. In addition to developing skills which can be applied to the project, the EPQ actively encourages students to be critical and reflective. So it's not just about making actions and solving problems, it's about taking those steps to improve your project and then taking a step back and evaluating whether those strategies and those processes which you were involved with were actually effective in helping you to develop your final outcome. And if you weren't completely satisfied with how the problem was solved, then you're able to go on and look for alternative solutions. As I've mentioned very briefly already, it does allow students to come up with outstanding decision-making and problem-solving skills. And these skills are transferred not only from the EPQ, but into other academic areas as well. And it also allows students to transfer skills into their daily lives. Now, at MPW, as you may already know, we have weekly testing at MPW Birmingham, and a lot of our students who do the EPQ then go on to get better higher timed assignment grades as well, and they become more rounded students, because some of the skills that you have to be taught during the EPQ process include time management, revision strategy, organization and planning. And as you will appreciate, these skills aren't just essential for an EPQ, but they're essential for daily life, and they are definitely essential for academic success. So with the EPQ, as I've mentioned, you have to create an essay, a diary, and a presentation. Now, the EPQ is quite unique in that you can literally write about anything. So you have to choose an area of personal interest. If you are completing a piece of history coursework or geography coursework, the topic area may be decided by the exam board in advance. But with the EPQ, you can literally do whatever you want. So some of our students who are applying for medical courses, what they might do is they might go and look at the undergraduate framework for a medical course, and then they might pick a first year module before deciding to research that in advance. And I've had EPQs about antibiotic resistance to support a medical application. I've had EPQs about dental hygiene and preventative dental care to support a dental application. I've had EPQs about supply side policies to support applications to proceed to study economics at university. There is no limit whatsoever to what students can choose to complete their EPQ on. And some students in the past have even done things like football or things like preventative kidney care in Brazil, the most random topics you could possibly imagine. But if a student is passionate enough about their topic area, then there is no reason why they couldn't complete an extended project in that topic. Once students have decided upon the topic they wish to complete their project in, what they need to do is plan their project and also get about researching the project. So what the first step I would advise students to do is to create something like a spider map, a spider diagram, where you put your topic in the middle and you create lots of branches out, and you potentially explore all the different areas that you might want to write about associated with your topic. And once you've come up with an idea of what you could write about, we actively encourage our students to go and research the topic in more detail at libraries. And here in Birmingham, we have fantastic access to the Birmingham City Library. We also have access to the University of Birmingham's library. And students will also inevitably use online resources as well. And they will use things like JSTOR and Google Scholar to access journal articles, a new resource which they wouldn't have necessarily encountered before doing an EPQ. And obviously getting to grips with research and journal articles is really going to help students prepare for the next step of their education when they go to university. Some students inevitably will think they are experts in their topic already, but as soon as they begin to complete that research process, they begin to discover exactly how much they weren't sure about initially. Students then, once they've collected all of this research, need to design their project. They need to start writing the essay. They need to start writing in their reflective journal. And I'll explain a little bit more about those components later on in the presentation. The third component of the EPQ is that once the students have completed their essay and they have completed their reflective journal, they also need to deliver a presentation to a non-specialist audience. So what students will need to do is they will need to take their essay, which is designed for an academic audience, and then interpret that for a range of non-specialists. So as I mentioned a moment ago, students can pick any area of personal interest which they desire. Now, I'm an economics teacher, so my subject and academic speciality is definitely in market forces, macroeconomics. But what students need to do to ensure success in the EPQ is make their astrophysics or medical-based EPQ interpretable by me. So as an economist, I should be able to understand and fully interpret the findings of a student's astrophysics EPQ. So they've got to essentially dumb it right down to my level, so I go away understanding the content which they have researched and the findings that they are presenting. With the EPQ, every single step of the journey can actually gain the student marks. Students can sometimes become het up with trying to perfect their essay, whereas actually the EPQ is assessed holistically, which means that they are assessed for the essay and the presentation and the reflective journal. And in that reflective journal, they need to make sure they are writing every single step of the process and evidencing that for the exam board, whether it be AQA, which is MPW's EPQ exam board of choice, or one of the other exam boards like Edexcel or OCR. And what I would encourage students who are starting an EPQ to do is just get a small notebook and almost, make notes about all of the things they've done for their EPQ, so that when it comes to completing the assessed journal, they can transfer their notes and they don't forget any of the key processes which they have already completed. Now, one of the other requirements of the EPQ is that students should attend 30 hours of talk content sessions. So as you will already know, MPW have very small class sizes, but this is the only time when we don't have small class sizes, when we have the EPQ talk content sessions. So again, to prepare students for university, the talk content sessions are actually lecture style, so slightly bigger classrooms. And what we do is we teach the students all of the skills they're going to need to successfully complete their EPQ. Now, even though they're lecture style, the quality of these talk content sessions is still outstanding. And what students will be able to do is complete activities, ask questions, listen to ideas, share ideas. And then at the end of their talk content session, they should be feeling ready to complete the next step of their EPQ journey. So here we have on the screen the 3 components of the extended project qualification. So on the left hand side, you can see an image which represents the essay. So if students choose to write an essay, which is the most common format of EPQ, and I'll explain some of the others later, if they choose to complete the essay should be 5,000 words in length. And AQA are very keen to stress that the EPQ needs to be 5,000 words, not necessarily plus or minus 10%. It shouldn't be more than 5,000 words. And actually, at the most recent standardization meeting I was at for AQA, they were saying they would expect students to successfully create a 5,000 word essay, because that's the design brief written in the specification. If a student is falling short, or they are exceeding the 5,000 word count, then potentially they aren't actually meeting the exam criteria. So they definitely seem to be a little bit more strict on word count in recent years, and they are asking students to aim for 5,000 words. Now, the essay structures will be quite similar for all students, and we will teach students the required structure and essay writing tips and referencing strategies in the talk content sessions to ensure they do create a really high quality final product. But most students will create a research-based written report. So they will be displaying findings which answer a question or a hypothesis style title. So upon deciding their topic at the planning stage, they will then come up with a title, and then they will write that written report, which will hopefully answer the question-based title which they have come up with. Then the second component is the production log, sometimes just referred to as the log or the reflective journal. Now, the production log is a hidden gem, and it really is the secret to success when it comes to completing the EPQ. So many students can spend a lot of time perfecting their essay and neglect the production log element of the qualification. The way that I like to think about the EPQ and the way that I explain it to my students is that the essay is only worth 40% of the marks. So the essay is basically showing your ability to develop and realize a final product in line with the specification brief. Whereas your production log is worth about 60% of the marks, roughly. Because what you can do in the production log is evidence all of the exam criteria. You can evidence your AO1, your ability to manage your project, to plan, to organize. You can evidence your AO2. You can tell AQA about all the resources you've used. You can critically reflect upon them. You can demonstrate AO3, which is the ability to develop and realize by planning processes and improvements and solving problems. And you can also demonstrate AO4, which is the ability to reflect critically. And with this production log, you can gain any marks which may have been lost or maybe missed in your essay, and it gives students the fantastic opportunity to create a portfolio of their skills, and they can then lift those skills into their personal statement or potentially reflect upon them further if they do go to interview at a university. The final component of the EPQ, as we can see on the right-hand side of the screen, is the EPQ presentation. And here we have an MPW student from a couple of years ago. And with the presentation, as I've mentioned, this should be designed for a non-specialist. So somebody who has never heard of the topic before they walked into that room to listen to that EPQ presentation. The essay, academic, it's designed for experts, but the presentation is very different, and it gets students to use skills to try and present their information in a more accessible manner. With the presentation, again, you can gain any of the assessment objective marks by reflecting on the processes which you have gone through, reflecting on your findings, your ability to manage your project, and also on any strengths and weaknesses of your project. The presentation also gives students a fantastic opportunity to think about what they would have done differently if they were going to do the EPQ again in future. Now, although it's unlikely a student would do an EPQ for a second time, that presentation is going to be really valuable in getting students ready for presentations or group work at university. And students will usually design a presentation using Microsoft PowerPoint or Prezi, and they may also use props to really get across their points to that non-specialist audience. So at the beginning of this presentation, I said to you that the EPQ was an outstanding way for your students to stand out from the crowd. Well, the times are changing in the UK education market, and although the EPQ may have helped you stand out from the crowd a couple of years ago, we can now argue that if you're not doing an EPQ, then you're standing out from the crowd. Because what we've seen is this drastic increase in the number of exam entries for the extended project in recent years. In 2018, 40,000 students in the UK submitted an EPQ. And the EPQ is incredibly attractive for students, not just at MPW, but throughout the whole of the UK, because students are able to gain UCAS points equivalent to half of an A-level. Now, before the educational reform to the specifications in 2015, the common model at A-level was for students to pick 4 AS qualifications and then maybe consider dropping one of those qualifications at the end of year 12 before continuing with 3 A-levels in year 13. But now the more common model is that students will pick 3 A-level choices and they will stick with them for the entirety of the 2-year course, but they will also pick up an extended project to go alongside their EPQ. Now at MPW, we're not discriminatory in terms of when you can complete your EPQ. You can do it in year 12, in year 13, or as a 1-year A-level student. But the most common model nationally seems to be that students in year 12 would start and finish their EPQ in that first year of A-level to make sure their university application is nice and competitive for the following year. So a couple of years ago, when I did similar presentations to this, a lot of people hadn't heard of the EPQ, but it's been really reassuring to see that most of you in the room already had some initial idea already. And if you don't, hopefully we're beginning to address some of your concerns right now. But one of the key things which one of my students actually said to me before I met with an educational agent a few years ago is, I really want you to stress to educational agents and educational professionals overseas how important the EPQ is. And if I was in your position, I would be fully encouraging students to think about their EPQ before they arrive in the UK to complete their A-level studies. And if you need any sort of metrics to reassure students about why they should complete the EPQ, then these are the 5 key reasons why we should be encouraging students to consider this qualification. The main selling point, I'll be honest, is the UCAS points. Unfortunately and inevitably, some students will end up going into clearing. And if they do go into clearing after completing their A-levels and getting their A-level results, the UCAS points that they've got from their EPQ could actually be the difference between them getting into a university or a slightly better university because they have enough UCAS points thanks to their EPQ. So a lot of students are attracted to the idea of the UCAS points. And those students who have completed their EPQ in year 12, they immediately have some currency when entering the market, applying for university at the beginning of year 13, because they maybe have 28 UCAS points to their name already. In addition, again, it's slightly inevitable that some year 12 students, when they're starting to write their personal statement, might not feel like they have enough to talk about. It's one of the most common things that students say to me, oh, I don't have that many skills to talk about. And obviously, you know, they're really underselling themselves. But doing an EPQ really will equip the students with the skills that they need to build a fantastic personal statement, because they're going to gain skills like time management, team working, presentation skills, and all of these skills can then be extended upon in their personal statement. The other really useful thing with the EPQ is those skills are transferable directly to the A-level subjects. So the University of Southampton's been doing some research recently, and they are implying that those students who get the best EPQ results inevitably also get the best A-level results, because some of those skills which aren't necessarily taught in the biology or business classroom at A-level, such as, you know, time management and planning or research skills, are still important. They're just assumed. So the EPQ is giving students that base of skills to then go on and be successful in their A-level subjects as well. The EPQ will also be a phenomenal asset when it comes to attending university interviews. So if a student is called for an interview, whether it be for medicine, dentistry, or any other competitive course, what the student can do is really reaffirm their passion for their chosen undergraduate program. So if a student turns up for an interview and is asked to explain the reasons why they were interested in medicine or law or dentistry or veterinary medicine, whatever the course may be, what they can do is they can begin to digress and talk about their EPQ and the work and the research they have already completed in advance of going to university. And the similar point, lastly, on this slide, is that it is an outstanding opportunity for students to gain the skills which are needed for university and to practice the assessment styles which are going to be expected at undergraduate level. So it's unlikely that before doing an EPQ, a student would have completed a 5,000-word research-based written report. Well, that skill is going to be in the bag because they've done the EPQ. So when they move to university, they can get a head start on preparing for assignments and coursework whilst their friends or their classmates are learning those skills for the first time. Also, students will learn skills like Harvard referencing, Vancouver referencing, writing bibliographies, doing presentations in like a Viva style where they're asked questions at the end. And all of these skills are just going to improve the quality of the student, but also make them feel a lot more at ease when they undergo that transformational change, which is attending university. Now, I did say that the UCAS points were the biggest draw, but then we have this slide here. Special offers and the safety net. Now, what we mean by this is that the universities in the UK really value those skills I've just described. They were slightly concerned that students were arriving from A-level, they had experienced a culture of spoon feeding and almost dependency on tutors and teachers, and they go to a university environment and they're being asked to work independently, to research, to reference, to study, to read, and these skills maybe have been lost or not sufficiently developed during the A-level process. But because the EPQ is designed to develop all of those skills, some of the leading universities, including the Russell Group universities and elite universities on this page, are beginning to reduce entry requirements for those students who complete the EPQ in addition to their A-level. So I've got them nice and big, local loyalty to Birmingham. The University of Birmingham is the university which is most close to MPW Birmingham. The University of Birmingham will reduce their standard entry requirements if a student gets an A or an A star at EPQ. So let's imagine that a student is applying to study law at the University of Birmingham, a very prestigious course. The admissions tutor will look at this student's profile, they will look at their personal statement and reference, and they will see they're doing the EPQ. All of the other areas of the application look to be in good shape. The student looks like they could be a really good candidate and successful candidate for the course. And what the University of Birmingham will do to encourage and entice that student to actually accept a place at UOB is they will reduce their standard entry requirement of AAA to AAB upon successful completion of the EPQ. So if a student was to miss one of their A-level grades on the day by a grade, they're still into the University of Birmingham. Even though they haven't met the standard entry requirement of AAA, the University of Birmingham places so much emphasis and so much importance upon the EPQ that students in anyway. Everybody knows that on the day of an exam, something can go wrong. Students who've worked incredibly tirelessly and revised to their maximum potential can still have a bad day during the actual exam. So the EPQ allows students to show their skills and develop skills throughout a whole academic year. And the University of Birmingham believes that is a more significant way of assessing progress than just A-levels in isolation, which are essentially just a one-off, all or nothing event, which are normally held in the summer term. Now, although all of the universities on this screen right now, Birmingham, Bath, Liverpool, Manchester, Southampton, Durham, Sheffield, have all, in my experience, reduced entry requirements for students who are studying the EPQ, it is really worth each individual student taking the time to research on the individual university's websites, or to contact the university they want to attend and ask whether they will do any special offers upon successful completion of the EPQ. On this slide, we've got 7 universities, and there are hundreds in the United Kingdom. In reality, there are way more universities making special offers based on the EPQ for their students. So it's worth each individual student contacting the university and asking them whether they will reduce the entry requirements if they do complete the EPQ. So we introduced the EPQ at MPW in 2015. When the A-levels were reformed, and we appreciated the demand for this new model of 3 A-levels and 1 EPQ. And the EPQ has been phenomenally successful since day one. So every year, our EPQ results seem to be getting better and better and better. And last year at MPW Birmingham, 74% of our students completing the EPQ received an A star or an A grade. And most of those students were then able to get that discounted entry requirements from the university that they wished to attend. On the screen here, we've got our principal on the left, Mark Shingleton, awarding the EPQ prize to one of our former students. And this student wrote a phenomenal EPQ essay about whether we should abolish cash and move to a contactless payment economy. And it was incredibly interesting and well researched. And we realized that the EPQ is such a big part of the MPW culture in 2020 and since 2015 that we wanted a whole award dedicated to this qualification. So not only are the universities placing significance on its merits, but the college is actually placing that value upon it as well. And that's leading to a phenomenal amount of our students wishing to complete an extended project. Now, nationally, the results might not be as good as at MPW, and I just wanted to reflect on why MPW's academic results for EPQ tend to be so phenomenally high. The secrets to our success is that every 2 weeks we have those talk content sessions in that one-off lecture style presentation where we teach the skills to the students. Now, although I've described it as lecture style, those talk content sessions still have that MPW touch. They still have that outstanding focus on teaching and learning. And what we do is we structure these talk content sessions so that we present the skills the students need and we look at ways they can be applied. We then get students to complete a task where they apply those skills, and then we sort of end the session by telling students how they could potentially use those skills to develop their own extended projects. And then students go out of those sessions feeling really infused with a clear idea of what they need to do next to complete their project and to meet the assessment criteria outlined by the exam board. In addition to those one-off talk content sessions every 2 weeks, which are lecture style, we also have regular one-to-one meetings with the students completing the EPQ. Now, these EPQs have a supervisor assigned to each student, and each student will be given a supervisor whose skill set most similarly matches the topic area the student wishes to research. And during each half term, the students will meet with their supervisor to discuss the progress in their extended project, to discuss ideas, to help potentially provide some guidance regarding how they might solve certain problems. We can also refresh any of the skills which they may have forgotten from the talk content session. And these regular one-to-one meetings allow students to feel motivated and inspired to go away and complete the next steps in their project. It's very much the MPW way of ensuring that students receive that individualized, tailored, bespoke support, whereby rather than applying a one-size-fits-all strategy to the EPQ, students actually get an individualized session where they receive feedback about how they can be most successful and make their aspirations a reality. Another key reason for our success is our flexibility when it comes to delivering the EPQ project. With the EPQ, we are non-discriminatory when it comes to who can complete it. We open our EPQ to Year 12 students, Year 13 students, and 1 year A-level students as well. And if a student in Year 12, the first year of their A-level program, is completing an EPQ, but they need a little bit more time to perfect it and develop it, we will actually allow those students to continue working on it over the summer and then submit it in the November exam entry time period. So rather than forcing the student to submit a substandard project, we will actually allow those students to progress with their project over the summer, perfect it, and then submit it in November. We're very, very flexible in making sure that students have all the resources and all the time they need to complete their project to the best possible standard. We also put really high quality resources on our virtual learning environment. Every MPW student can access Firefly, which is our VLE, virtual learning environment platform. And on the VLE, we place all of the resources from the talk content sessions. We also provide guidance regarding how to analyze sources, how to reference your project professionally, and those high quality resources can be accessed 24/7 from anywhere in the world. So students are never alone. If they've got a problem, they can go onto the VLE and access the resources to ensure they go away and complete their EPQ in the best possible way. And at MPW, as you I'm sure already know to some extent, we have an outstanding pastoral care and pastoral support framework. And we have at MPW Birmingham a personal tutor team, whereas at MPW London and Cambridge, you'd have director of studies. And these professional academics work with students on a one-to-one basis. And here at MPW, it's not just me as the EPQ coordinator who is insightful about the EPQ. Every single member of the pastoral team are also familiar with the EPQ requirements. And then in those weekly one-to-one pastoral meetings, if a student hasn't had time to contact their EPQ supervisor, they can actually just get in contact with their PT and ask their PT or director of studies general questions, and they will be able to assist that student. Now, at the beginning of the session, I said that students could genuinely write about anything which they wanted to, and I'm not joking. I'm not lying. They really can pick any topic that they want. And here on the screen, you can see some of our topics from the previous academic year. So although at MPW it's very common to get lots of dental or medical based EPQs, we've also had EPQs about mental health, artificial intelligence, cosmetic surgery, and even things like K-pop. I've had 2 EPQs in the past year about K-pop. Now, you can't write about why BTS are your favorite band. That is not an academic research-based report, but students can potentially research the impact of K-pop on the South Korean economy. They could research the effectiveness of advertising and branding strategies used by individual K-pop artists. So they can maybe find an area of their A-level qualification and then apply that to the topic such as K-pop to develop an EPQ. On the screen, we have a picture of the poster from the Disney Pixar film Finding Nemo. And my favorite EPQ of all time was about Finding Nemo. And you might be thinking, how can that possibly be academic? But this EPQ was about the extent to which children's films and cartoons had created an increase in cases of dental phobia in the UK. So an increase in the number of people who were scared to visit the dentist. And what they did is they got research findings year on year about the number of people who said they felt anxiety when going to visit a dentist. And they then mapped that against the release of certain children's films whereby the dentist was portrayed as the villain, the baddie in that film. And they found that after the release of Finding Nemo, there was a peak in dental phobia cases because the dentist is portrayed as this really evil character with lots of scary machinery. And similarly, there was also another peak in dental anxiety and dental phobia after the release of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where the main character, Willy Wonka, has that phobia of the dentist. So it was a really, really interesting report, which, used research, used actual data and statistics. It wasn't about the plot of Finding Nemo. It was about the impact that Finding Nemo had on dental health in the United Kingdom. Now, do students have to write an essay? The answer is yes, to some extent. Most students completing the EPQ will pick the traditional model. The traditional EPQ model is to write the 5,000 word written report, which I outlined right at the beginning of this webinar. But students do have an alternative option. If a student is a little bit apprehensive about completing a 5,000 word written report, or maybe essay writing isn't their main skill set, maybe they're more creative or artistic, or maybe they prefer mathematical problem solving, they can create an EPQ known as an artifact. The artifact is essentially another way of completing the EPQ, which is non-essay based, and there is no limit whatsoever to what students can create. So some students may wish to create a website, or a business plan, or a mathematical model, or a piece of art, or a photography exhibition, or maybe a charity event. And in all of those different project types that I've outlined, you still need to demonstrate time management skills, organizational skills, research skills, planning skills. And therefore, the EPQ doesn't just confine you to just an essay. You can create anything when it comes to an artifact. On our screen here, we can see one of our maths tutors on the right. This maths tutor is a principal examiner for the Edexcel exam board, and he's one of my colleagues at MPW Birmingham. And next to him is one of his maths students. And this maths student decided they didn't want to write a 5,000 word essay. They wanted to create a mathematical model. And this student, Howard, is now studying at the University of Oxford, reading mathematics. And this student completed a mathematical model for their EPQ, which was of such an incredible standard that I couldn't even interpret it whatsoever. And you're thinking, well, okay, Martin, you've already told us that you're an economics teacher, so you might have some math skills, but maybe not, you know, A-level math standard. So I passed this mathematical model onto Rob, the principal examiner for Edexcel. And he looked at it and he said, this EPQ is undergraduate standard minimum. Some of the stuff which this student is talking about, I've never researched. He said, ask Lorette, who is an examiner for AQA and one of our physics teachers. So I gave Lorette the project and she said, this is almost like postgraduate level, some of the elements of physics, which he is talking about in his EPQ. So at the end of the day, we had 3 key members of staff, the main maths teacher, the main physics teacher, and the EPQ coordinator, who didn't really understand what the project had found out because it was so complex. So we sent it off to AQA with a nice covering letter and said, look, we think this is a really, really good project, but we're not sure how to award it because nobody really understands it. And AQA sent the project to one of their lead mathematicians, and they decided that the student deserved 50 out of 50 without hesitation. The student got full marks for their project. And it just shows that, you know, if you have a skill that isn't essay writing, you can still go on and get an A star in the EPQ. If you're good at maths or physics, if you want to do a scientific experiment or a model or a piece of art, you can do that. On my office wall, I have an EPQ artifact, which is a piece of art that a student drew. It's of a landscape, and they researched the famous British artist J.W. Turner, and they used the artist's techniques to develop their own series of landscape paintings. And again, that student was able to get an A star in their EPQ, even though they weren't writing a 5,000 word essay. Now, there isn't a complete escape from the essay, and students who complete an artifact will need to write a 1,000 word essay to go alongside the artifact. So it's a lot shorter, typically just goes over a couple of pages of A4, but nonetheless, they will need to submit an essay to go alongside their artifact, which basically just gives the exam board and myself as the EPQ coordinator the chance to understand the academics behind the model or the photo or the piece of art the student has submitted as an EPQ. So international students are completing the EPQs in huge numbers at MPW. In the first year, I'll be honest, in 2015, there was a lack of familiarity with the EPQ. International students arriving in a new country, lots to get to grips with, new culture, new language for some students, new teachers, new environment, new place to live. They were trying to get to grips with their A-level studies, never mind trying to take on more work. But since 2016, we've seen an upward trajectory of students taking the extended project qualification. And on the screen here, we've got a few quotes from some of the international students I've worked with in recent years. And the first student said, the EPQ has helped me to improve my written communication in English. So this student has been able to develop their English skills, and that again has helped them with their A-level subject. The EPQ allowed me to research an area about my home country and get away from my grandma's biased opinion. That's what a Nigerian student told me in 2018 when they did their EPQ on the success of Goodluck Jonathan's time as Nigerian president. It allows students to discover and research things by themselves for the first time. Again, another student feeling more confident about presenting in English and getting ready for the demands of the university. But the final quote on this page, in my opinion, is the most important one. This is what a student told me last year before our annual partner conference. They said, I really wish that agents in my home country knew about the EPQ so that they could tell us to prepare in advance of arriving in the UK. And again, I mentioned this earlier in the presentation, but students can begin to start to complete their EPQ now, today, over the summer. There's nothing to stop them developing their ideas in advance of arriving at MPW. And the question on the board, can students start their EPQ over the summer? Absolutely. It doesn't have to be the summer. I know technically we've started summertime here in the UK now, but it's still a little bit cold outside. You can definitely start your EPQ today. It doesn't matter what season it is. There's always the chance to start an EPQ. And as I've mentioned already, we are incredibly flexible with students' starting times and also their finishing times. Because at the end of the day, as a teaching professional, all we care about is giving the students all of the tools they require to be successful. It doesn't really matter when they start the process. So I hope you have enjoyed listening to this webinar about the extended project qualification, and hopefully I've given you a significant insight into how the qualification works here at MPW, but also in the UK as a whole. I'm now available to take your questions, and my colleagues Felicity, Betty and Shahina may have some questions which you've been dropping into the chat box. And if you think of anything after this session that you still want to ask me, then you can get in contact via the email on the screen, which is international@mpw.ac.uk, and my fantastic colleagues will then forward your query onto me. But I'm now available to take questions.
Thank you, Martin. That was great. So yes, we did have a couple of questions through for you.
Great.
First one is from Whiskey Man. Great name, by the way. May I know the total hours of taught content sessions for students?
Yeah, great. It's a really good question. So the EPQ as a whole takes about 100 hours to complete. But there are 30 hours of taught content sessions. So in total, students will have 30 hours of taught content where they learn all those key skills like referencing, presentation skills, essay writing, researching, resource analysis. That will be 30 hours in total.
Great, thank you so much, Martin. So the next question is from Elisa. She says, many children nowadays are keen on becoming popular bloggers. Do I understand correctly that creating a specialized blog, for example, dedicated to science or any particular sports, can be counted towards an EPQ?
Absolutely, 100%. As I mentioned a moment ago, there is no limit to what you can create for an artifact. And I was at a standardization meeting for AQA in February. And at that meeting, we were given an example of a student who had created a blog which was about English literature and about techniques which authors had used to present their characters. So AQA are giving us that content in their meetings, so they are aware that vlogging or blogging, YouTube channel creation is a potential artifact model which is going to become increasingly popular over the next few academic years. So there is nothing whatsoever to stop a student from doing a blog. A blog about science sounds really exciting, and I would love to work with that student.
Fantastic, thank you. Next question from Tatiana. So how can the agents in particular help students to prepare for the EPQ in advance of arriving to the UK?
Really good question. Yeah, I'm telling you to advise your students to make a start, but you need the tools. If you go onto the AQA website, you will be able to download the specification for the extended project qualification. And there is also a more condensed version, which is a little bit more student friendly and gives students an overview of the key assessment objectives. But most importantly, from the AQA website, you can actually download the production log. The production log, the reflective journal, is easily accessible on the AQA website. And if you get students to look through it, there are parts of it which are relatively self-explanatory and they can begin to complete before arriving in the UK. So if you go into your production log, the first page which you will encounter is called the Record of Initial Ideas and Project Proposal. And in that section, you can fill in all of your ideas, you can get all of your thought processes onto paper, and then you can present that to your teachers upon arriving in the UK. So I definitely advise them to download that. I would also just encourage them to read around the topic. So, if a student does say to you, I want to write an EPQ about economics, well, encourage them to read some accessible books like Freakonomics, or maybe have a look, skim read through Wealth of Nations or Startup Nation, some books associated with the topic, because reading around that topic area is going to be really important for students to show a breadth of research, but also to help them develop the plan for their whole essay. And I think, when they arrive in the UK, these students will find the research part of the EPQ the most burdening, because they're going to be preparing for their weekly tests. But if they've already done the reading before arriving in the UK, that's really going to help them make a great start.
Okay, fabulous, great. So next question, there's a couple here from Dewey, EB. Hi, Martin.
Hi.
My questions are, how long does it usually take from choosing the topic until the project presentation? And then the second one is it possible for 3 or 4 students to create a group and this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question was about the time between initially finding the topic and then the presentation. So normally you find your topic on day 1, day 2 of your EPQ process, and then by the time you've done your presentation, you've probably done 80 hours of work. You've done at least 80% of your extended project. At MPW Birmingham, we actually do the presentation as the very last part of the EPQ. So even after submitting the essay and submitting the production log, the reason why is because if a student hasn't demonstrated assessment objectives which they needed to in the essay or in the production log, what we can do is we can ask them questions at the end of the presentation to make sure they get all the marks that they need to. So there's at least 80 hours between finding the topic and then giving the presentation. If we're thinking about a traditional academic year, you'd be finding your topic in September and doing your presentation in April. With the question about 3 or 4 students working together, that is absolutely possible. Students can work together collaboratively to create a group project. And with the group projects, the only special consideration is that they must give their own final presentation about their own role in the group project, and they must also write their own production log. So they can create the final product together, whether that's an essay or whether that's an event. Most group projects tend to be events, like a charity event or a fashion exhibition or a photography exhibition. And then they have to write their own learning journal and their own presentation to go alongside the event. But it's absolutely possible, and they make really interesting projects.
Great, thank you so much. So Betty has a question. Would you recommend an A-level student planning to apply to top universities to take an EPQ in addition to 3 A-level subjects, or is it better to have the 4th subject?
Well, that's a really, really good question. And I've actually had a student this year who has done a 4th A-level subject and an EPQ. But that student, you know, is working 24/7, and I don't advise it. It's really burdensome. But the universities, when they make their offers, they tend to only make it on 3 A-level course choices anyway. So I would personally recommend doing the EPQ, because the EPQ is what's going to differentiate you from the other candidates. You're the only person in the country who's writing that EPQ. You're potentially one of only a couple of people nationally doing that topic in a given year. So it is really going to help you to stand out from the crowd when it comes to your application. You can talk about it in your personal statement. You can talk about it in your interview. If let's say you're applying for medicine and you're doing biology, chemistry, and maths, and you're thinking, should I do an EPQ or physics? Personally, I would say do the EPQ and reaffirm your passion for studying medicine or dentistry or whatever it may be, rather than just being another student who's taking physics. I would personally recommend doing the EPQ.
Okay, so a 1-year A-level student taking the EPQ, or is that too much workload for that student?
Again, like I said earlier in the presentation, we are non-discriminatory here at MPW. If anybody wants to do an EPQ, they can do the EPQ. It's definitely possible for a 1-year A-level student to do an EPQ. And I'll be honest, with 1-year A-level students, the quality of the EPQ tends to be a lot higher than the year 12 and year 13 students. Actually, those students who are doing the A-level in 1 year are already so focused and already have such sort of a driven mentality to reaching their final goal that actually the EPQ, even though it's 100 hours of work, if you split that over, you know, the 40 weeks of the academic year, it's 2.5 hours per week. It's definitely manageable. And again, with that key academic infrastructure provided by MPW, whereby you have your pastoral support and you have your individual supervisor, you're going to get all the support and all the guidance you need to be able to manage your workload effectively.
Great, thank you. So Yachien has a question here. Can I ask, are the EPQs assessed internally or by AQA?
Really good question. So the way that it works, as with all coursework subjects here in the UK, is the EPQ is submitted to me as the centre coordinator, and along with my outstanding team of supervisors, we mark and assess each of the projects which have been presented to us. And what we need to do is we use the AQA mark scheme and the AQA specification and framework to determine the grade for each EPQ. And then upon uploading the marks to the AQA sort of like electronic exams register, AQA then generates an automatic randomized sample. So if we've got, let's say, 60 students doing an EPQ and we upload 60 results, to AQA, they will ask for 15 random projects. And what they do is a quality assurance process whereby they check that we have applied the mark scheme fairly, there's no grade inflation, we're doing our jobs properly. And that moderation process is absolutely key on a national basis. And to ensure that we are marking correctly and getting students the grades that they need and they deserve, every single year I have to go to 2 standardization meetings for AQA. So I go to one in October time for the November series and one in January time for the June series, whereby we have to do like a dummy run of marking extended projects, and we have to be within a certain grade of the chief examiner to be, allowed to mark essentially. So it's a really, really, tight process. We determine the marks, pass them on to AQA. AQA check 15 marks, and if they're correct, everyone's mark stands. We've never not been correct, but if a centre wasn't correct in their application of the marking scheme, the grades that have been given could be regressed. So if they find that on the 15 samples, the centre has overmarked, they will bring down all 60 grades, not just the 15 that they have seen. But like I said, thankfully, we've never had that happen to us, and I'm confident that we will never have it happen to us because we put a lot of time into marking those scripts and justifying the grades that we've awarded.
Okay, great. So just a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
So what about the foundation students? Tara's asking, can students studying for foundation program take advantage of the EPQ?
100%, yeah. So the Nigerian student who I quoted in my previous slide, they were an NCUK foundation student here at MPW Birmingham, and they were doing the NCUK Business International Foundation year. So they were studying business, economics, and maths. And they did their EPQ on Goodluck Jonathan's time as a Nigerian president, and they went on to get an A grade in their EPQ. This year, I've had 3 projects submitted by our foundation year students out of a cohort on the business pathway of 8. So, almost just under 50% of our foundation students are also doing an EPQ. And I think those students produce really good EPQs because in NCUK, which we have at Birmingham, they have the EAP lessons, which are 8 hours per week, which they, they learn lots of skills which are relevant to the EPQ. And they also have a lot of coursework assessment anyway. So these students actually are in quite a privileged position because they learn all the coursework skills in the foundation program and then transfer those to EPQ. Whereas the A-level students, they learn the skills in EPQ and then transfer it to A-level. The foundation students actually have a head start, and it's very, very popular with our foundation students here in Birmingham and likewise in Cambridge and London.
Okay, great, thank you. Rachel's asking, what will EPQ stated in an A-level transcript? So how will it be stated, EPQ?
How does it appear? You would get your A-level results. It might say like biology, chemistry, physics, and it will say extended project qualification, and then the grade will be next to your A-levels, and the EPQ grades are released on the same day as the A-level day. It's a level 3 qualification, and you will get your certificates on the same day as your A-level certificates. It'll be on the same transcript as your A-level transcript. It's also put in the same part of your UCAS application, so it holds very, very similar merit.
Great, thank you. Dana Al Ali, she's actually an international applicant who has asked this question. Since we can start working on our EPQ today and throughout the summer, are we going to be assigned a tutor who is a specialist or expert in our chosen topic area, whom we could contact online before our arrival to the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. So it doesn't really matter where you're going, whether you're going to Birmingham, London, or Cambridge. If you are already signed up to come to MPW for the next academic year, if you get in contact with me via the email international@mpw.ac.uk, I will answer any questions that you've got, give you some initial ideas. And if you are going to Cambridge or London, I'll liaise with my colleagues Chris and Matt to make sure that they have got a supervisor ready for you for when you arrive in September.
Great. Thank you so much. That's it, I can see, for all of the questions that have come through. Martin,
Great.
Is there anything that you would like to add, or anything you would like to just go over quickly, or are you all good?
I'm definitely all good, but no, I just want to thank everybody for their time this morning. And like I've already said, if you do think of anything after this session, I would genuinely be delighted to help you. So please get in contact via international@mpw.ac.uk. Thanks again for your time today, and I hope you have a really good day and you stay safe.
Thank you so much, Martin, and thank you everybody who's joined. Sorry for the slight technical hitch at the beginning, but just to reiterate that this will be recorded, so we will send you the link. And of course, if you have any more follow-up questions or anything you would like to ask Martin, then do feel free to email that over to international@mpw.ac.uk. Thank you so much. Thank you. Stay safe and have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.